One. Great, so we're on mute. Welcome everyone, good evening. So we're live. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. I know everyone was very excited to be here this evening. We promise not to keep you from your loved ones, and we do thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening for this very important forum. My name is Savannah Purcell. I am the female district leader for the 43rd Assembly District. This evening, we're here for a county Democratic forum, right? With 5 candidates vying to fill the vacant seat in the 43rd Assembly District. Just to give a background, the seat became vacant when the former Assembly member, Diana Richardson, took the position of Deputy Board President. The governor has issued a proclamation calling for a special election on March the 22nd. As part of our responsibilities as district leaders, we're required to bring together the county committee members of the 43rd district in order to select a Democratic nominee. Tonight, we're live via Facebook, via webinar, and via various social media platforms with county committee members, as well as members from the community at large. The community of the 43rd district incorporates Crown Heights, Prospect Lovers Garden, East Flatbush, and sometimes, like I say, Wingate. Just depending on how you join the lines. So it's a diverse district, and we have wonderful candidates here tonight to answer your questions. And yeah, I'm going to turn it over to my co-leader just to make sure we're able to thank our sponsors before we're able to formally begin, lay out the format and directions, and go from there. So thank you guys for joining. I turned over to my co-district leader, Edu Hermelin.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you to my co-district leader, Savannah Purcell. Once again, I'm district leader Edu Hermelin. Wishing everyone a happy Valentine's Day. We're not going to keep you long. We just want to give you this opportunity to hear these fine candidates talk about their vision and their priorities. And looking forward to a really solid debate tonight. So tonight I also would like to, in recognition of Black History Month, I'd like to recognize our co-sponsors, the Vanguard Independent Democratic Association, the Shirley Chisholm Democratic Club, the Rosa Parks Democratic Club, and also the Arthur Ashe Democratic Club. So now that we've acknowledged all of our sponsors, I want to pass it on, and also to the Brooklyn Young Dems. On the line, we have our moderator, President of the Brooklyn Young Dems, Jermaine Isaac. Mr. Isaac, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Edu. Good evening, everyone. All candidates are now on the screen together, and we will be on the screen for the entire night. And we just want to go over the structure and the rules of the forum. So first, we would like to thank you all for being on time and being here as we started promptly at 7. And for all candidates, there will be 3 moderators and a timekeeper. In addition to that, each candidate will be allowed to make a 2-minute opening statement focusing on his or her background, reason for running, and policies they support. The moderator will then pose 2 or 3 questions. For each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer. Based on the time allowed, the organizers will generate audience questions, which will be presented to the candidates later in our forum. And each candidate will be given 1 minute to make a closing statement. So we're looking forward to your participation and strongly encourage you to bring your authentic self and share your vision and plan to move the district forward. And now I'm going to pass it over to District Leader Savannah.
Thank you very much for that. And tonight, we're joined by Pierre Albert. We're also joined by Brian Cunningham, Jelani Deshawn, Timothy Hunter, and Shara Redburn. So these are our fine candidates who are joining us here this evening. And we're first going to start off going in alphabetical order by first name. And when we ask the next question, we're going to start backwards and go the other way, just to ensure that we have a little fairness and, and Pierre, you're not starting first, okay? So I'm now going to turn it over to have the candidates, just starting off with Pierre Albert. Can you give us your 2-minute opening statement?
Sure. I first want to thank our district leaders and the Brooklyn Young Dems for hosting this forum and for having me on. Thank you. And I want to thank my wife, Dr. Renee Albert, for allowing me to take some time out of my evening. And I want to wish her a happy Valentine's Day and tell her that I love her. So my name is Pierre Mark Albert. I was born in this district and I was raised in this district. My sister and my niece who comes with me to campaign events live on Parkside, and I live a couple blocks away. And so I went to high school in this district, Medgar Evers College Preparatory School. That high school is near and dear to my heart because that's the school that I fell in love with a career in government and a career in politics. And I got my first job opportunity in this district. And I'm very proud that my first job was being a driver slash body man for then Senator Eric Adams. And I'm very proud of the fact that I worked my way up the ladder because my second job was being a scheduler from Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, now council member who has proudly endorsed our campaign. And from there, I had an opportunity to work for Assemblyman Kareem Kamara as his community relations director, being his representative here in the district, and also coordinating with the Albany staff. But my time in service hasn't strictly just been in government. I've always been engaged in the community. I served on Light the World Foundation's board of directors, where we had a mentorship program and a scholarship program for both students here in Brooklyn and in Haiti. And we gave out scholarships to allow people to be able to afford to go to college. I've served in leadership in my church, where we host community events that serve the community, the Brooklyn community at large. We've hosted immigration forums, partnering with former council member Matthew Eugene in the 40th Council District, and partnering with the Mayor's Office of Immigration Affairs. And we've hosted mental health forums, partnering with Thrive New York City and former First Lady Shirley McCray. And so I've always been about public service. And for the last 7 years, I've been working at the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery as a program manager in the housing department, helping victims that have been affected by Hurricanes Sandy, Irene, and Lee, helping to disperse those funds to those people who have suffered dearly. And so I see this as a chance to just do public service and serve the assembly district that I love, that has given so much to me. This district, this high school, this assembly district, the 20th senatorial district has given so much to me. And I see this as an opportunity to give back, help raise the wealth in this community, help us have a stronger, rigorous educational curriculum, help us create jobs. And that's why I'm running for New York State Assembly.
Okay, so we came up one time and did a little extra, so we're gonna just allow this in for everyone else. Just make sure you keep it in a time frame. Next, thank you for that, Pierre. Brian Cunningham.
Everyone, happy Valentine's Day to everyone on the call. First of all, thank you to the organizers, the hosts, the moderators for putting together this forum with these wonderful candidates. To all the fellow candidates, as I've said before in the past, and I'll say again, it is a privilege to run alongside all of you. You guys are exemplary people and public servants, and look forward to this debate today. My name is Brian Cunningham. Many of you know me from many different avenues in life. Also, Pierre set a very high bar, my wife. Thank you, baby, for allowing me to be on this forum tonight. So let me make sure I get that out of the way. But many of you guys know me from many different experiences in this community. The 43rd Assembly District, as I often say, kind of is the thread that keeps my life together. It neatly stitches together the entire story of who I am as a person. I was born and raised here, went to school at Preschool Mine, which is on Church Avenue, went to MS2, went to PS 221, go to church in the community, and married the love of my life in the neighborhood. So this neighborhood is more than just a collection of blocks. It's just literally a thing that keeps me together. Over the last couple of years, I've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time doing work in this community. And obviously tonight we're gonna go into a lot of topics, whether it be housing, criminal justice, and all those different various topics. And 60 seconds won't be enough to convey all of it. But I'm hoping that the 17 years of work that I've done in this neighborhood, starting with being a special assistant for Senator Parker, working as a chief of staff in the City Hall, working for the Obama administration, but also like Pierre, not limited to just government, right? My work extends to working at Canberra as a youth advisor, working in Nazareth Housing, working on housing, and most importantly, working on gun violence as a public health crisis through SOS, Save Our Streets Brooklyn. I'm hoping to take all those experiences that I've done both in government and out government and my lived experiences into Albany to help echo the voices of people in this community who are fighting for affordable housing, a quality education, fighting for the right to leave their house safely and return home safely, making sure that we have air quality that is proper in our communities and a hospital system that can care for us, particularly given the animated health exacerbations COVID-19 has created. Looking forward to fighting for this community and looking forward to the conversations, not just tonight, but throughout the course of this campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Jelani Deson, and if you want to correct me.
Okay, Jelani Deschamps, no problem. All right, you're not the only one. So happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Thank you guys so much for pulling this together, Adu and Sarana, and especially Jermaine, President of Brooklyn Young Democrats. Thank you so much for this opportunity to once again come together and plead our case to the great and mighty 43rd Assembly District. My name is Jelani Deschamps, candidate for New York State Assembly. I'm running simply because this community has given me so much, and I'm deeply invested and deeply personal for this community. I spent my entire life, whether it's City Hall, whether it's Albany, always in the back of my mind and always on my heart, Central Brooklyn and the 43rd. When I had the great opportunity to come back and work right here in the heart of the 43rd and walk to work every day at SUNY Downstate Medical Center. And then at the height of the COVID pandemic, if it's battling food insecurity, but also seeing firsthand the scourge of what it means to be underfunded and underserved right here in the heart of Brooklyn. This is personal to me. I'm not running for campaign slogans or to get my name out there. I'm running because I've done it. I've lived it. This is my life. This is what I do every day. Whether it's on my walk up Rogers Avenue, my walk on Nostrand, wherever I decide to walk, or hanging out at Zummy or aunts and uncles. It's my life. This community has given me so much, and now I'm willing to give back just a little bit. I know sometimes running for office is a difficult thing to do, to put your name out there and your family have to sign up for something, but this is something that I've always done. I wouldn't be here today if it was not for the 43rd Assembly District. I remember one day coming home and not having light in the house, and the neighbor just saying, hey, run extension cord, no problem. That's why I'm here. This community has raised a boy to this man that you see before you today. And I'm so happy and so proud to be here and to even have this opportunity to possibly one day represent the mighty 43rd. This district represents so many different people, walks of life, economic, racial, whatever. But at the core and the heart is love and respect and service. And that's what I'm all about. I'm about getting things done. Not for the glitz and glamour, but just for getting things done. My time at City Hall, my time in state government has always been how to get things done and finding the solution. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm running. And that's why I'm putting my name forward. Because I think with my years of experience, whether at City Hall, whether in the governor's office, or whether right here in the heart of the 43rd, working at an underserved and underfunded hospital, I've always put this community first. And that's what I'm here to do, to be a true independent voice for the 43rd and continually fight every single day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Timothy Hunter, the opening statement.
Sorry, I apologize. Was it alphabetical order?
By last name.
Okay, got you. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I thought it was alphabetical because I was like, S is before.
Oh,
T.
last name.
I apologize. Am I good to go?
Good to go.
Sounds good. I apologize for the hiccup there. Greetings, everyone. My name is Timothy Hunter. I'm a candidate here for New York State Assembly, just like the other candidates here. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm here and I'm so thankful that I get to spend my Valentine's Day with my true love, the residents of the 43rd Assembly District. I think that, the opportunity to speak to you all tonight is something that I greatly appreciate on this stage with such great candidates. I'm really looking forward to tonight's debate. I also want to just say thank you so much to the district leaders and all the affiliates that helped to put this together. So as I said earlier, my name is Timothy Hunter, and the 43rd District, similar to a lot of people here, has raised me. I went to MS 61 for middle school. My mom still teaches there. For those that don't know, it's right on Empire between Nostrand and New York. I also went to PS 235, right across the street from Kings County, right before they named it the Janice Mary Knight School. Janice Mary Knight was actually my principal before they renamed the school after her untimely death. And I think that when we look at the 43rd, I think we're looking at a community that's resilient, right? We've battled COVID, we battled against so many other, hiccups that we've seen throughout the course of, not only the pandemic, but even before that. And I think what we really need is a legislator that's going to be representative of the community, not only here on the ground in the district, but also in Albany. We need a representative that's not going to be beholden to real estate, not going to be beholden to any other governmental powers that be. We need someone that's going to be a representative of the community and be ready to get work done on day one. I actually used to work for the former assembly member that ran this that ran before, Assembly Member Richardson. I see somebody say 235 in the house. There we go. And I worked with her in the height of the COVID pandemic. The food distributions that we did at Crown Gardens fed hundreds of families. And I think that it's important that we do everything we can to continue to make sure we have progressive representation in Albany. Our district is over 80% of our district is renters. I'm a little bit cold right now. I'm not sure if you kind of see me shivering a little bit because I just came in from Park Place, the northern part of the district, where there is currently tenants that are fighting for their lives at threat of, and they're under threat of being evicted. And I think the fact that this is happening in our own district, this is happening in our own backyard, we need leaders that are not afraid to go up there and call for good cause eviction and call for the passage of legislation that will protect our homeowners, that will protect our tenants, and ensuring that we can try to preserve as much as we can in this district, because displacement is happening at an alarmingly fast rate. And we need to do everything in our power to make sure that we're putting the community first. That's exactly why we're not taking any money from real estate. We're not taking any money from corporate interests. I know I'm young, but I am experienced. I've worked in the state legislature for the past 3 years. I've worked in both houses, actually, in the Senate and in the Assembly. And I think it gives us the opportunity to do, everything that we can here in the 43rd to serve the people at large. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Timothy. Sharon Weatherburn.
So good evening, everyone. What a pleasure it is to be in company of people who were raised in the 43rd, the mighty, mighty 43rd, and are now seeking to represent it. I want to give a special shout out to our district leaders in the mighty 43rd, as well as to Jermaine Isaac of Brooklyn Young Dems for making this forum possible on Valentine's Day. Essentially, I'm going to say that my candidacy for this role is my love letter to this community. Without the foundation that I was able to have in terms of neighbors and education, diverse opportunities, because many people looked at me and said, hey, kid, I think you'll be able to do this. And I had parents who made sure that my sister and I had educational opportunities. Sometimes that meant that we were trudging through the snow, taking a bus and a train to get to a school that met our social, emotional, and our academic needs. And that's one of the things that motivated me. By trade, I'm a financial services professional. What does that mean? Too many people are measuring their worth by money. I wasn't raised for that. I was raised to be able to take care of my community, look after my family, look out for now I have nieces and nephews, and making sure that things work well. There are people that can't advocate for themselves or are nervous about advocating, don't know where the roadways and pathways are to be able to communicate, to have their needs met. And the one thing I can certainly say about the pandemic is that we absolutely saw the cracks in foundations. For example, children that weren't able to access their learning devices because they didn't have internet or electricity at home. The amount of people that were having issues meeting their food needs, never mind the people who were unemployed that were unable to meet their rent requirements or were having trouble with their mortgage obligations. And the question begins, there are issues within our community. There are policies that have been made. As legislators, we're going to have to look forward to a couple of things. We're going to be responsible for a budget. We're going to promulgate policy that becomes legislation. And we have to make sure that things happen in our community, because any one of us can identify the gaps, but it has to be a person that's committed that when they step into a room where the community is not with us, we're always taking the community into the room and identifying their needs. So simply stated, one of the things that I really, really would like to accomplish in this is to make sure that our needs are met. Where are our shortfalls? Certainly in the educational dollars that come into the community. Where are our shortfalls? We have 2 impressive hospitals, one of which is severely underfunded, which used to be a jewel in the SUNY system. That has to change. I've had the experience of recently going to Kings County Hospital because I fell and broke my shoulder. The care that I got without question about my insurance, it took a few appointments in for them to actually realize they didn't have my insurance information. And that made me glad because I knew the quality of service that I was receiving, I was giving irrespective of my ability to pay. And once they had my insurance card, they said, you're going to be good. But here's the important thing. No one should be sick. No one should be hungry. No one should suffer ill effects because they don't have their services met. And as legislators, we have to make sure that we are going to be able to take care of our needs through our policies, our community's needs, through our policies, through funding, through innovative approaches to programming. And there are many things that have changed in the community up and down. One of our big concerns right now is public safety. Unfortunately, I have Citizens app on my phone. Some evenings it would make you afraid to go outside. My mother used to take the trains, the great public transportation we have within this district, until she was 90 years old by herself. And yes, my friends would report that they had seen my mother on the train at night. But that gave me some comfort because she had freedom and she had confidence in the safety of her community. There are many approaches to violence, and certainly we have to fund things that we know. Having a messenger, someone who's been in that position before, to be able to tell other people that would like to engage in violence to stop, making sure that we're policed appropriately. And we've had over-policing and it hasn't changed the results. We have to make sure that we have the resources so they're deployed so that we have prevention, that children don't fall into the criminal justice system, and cure, that when people come out of the criminal justice system, they have opportunities for jobs that don't require high school diplomas, that they have an opportunity to have a safe home. All of us need safe homes. And the last thing I'm going to say, one of the things that's missing that my parents had to benefit for, there was a ladder within the community in terms of housing. My parents went from renters in subsidized housing to homeowners. That opportunity no longer exists within this district, and we have to do everything we can to make sure we bring it back.
Okay, great. And at 7:25, that's the amount of time we have for this section. So we're on time, believe it or not. And we didn't want to cut anyone off because this is an introduction to you and the residents in the community. And I'm sure they want to hear what you have to say, but we do ask that you try to be mindful of time and try to look for when we're trying to cue you. I don't want to cut anybody off and be rude. Thank you for that, Sharon. And with that being said, I'm going to ask you a second question, which kind of tied back to, well, a question that ties back to your opening statement. And we're going to start off with you. And it's clear that many of you have very different experiences. Many of you have your connection to the districts, right? Many of you work in various different fields. But what makes you uniquely qualified, separates you from your fellow competitors based on your background, policy, and vision? What separates you from the pack? Sharon, 1 minute.
Okay, I will be mindful. So certainly it's my method of problem solving. One, first of all, and I'm going to say this, I actually learned this methodology when I was in elementary school in the district. One of the things you have to look at is what information comes to you. If there's something that doesn't work, why on earth, how on earth did this happen? And being a part of the community board, I've had the opportunity to interact with many community members, and also looking at an issue from the myriad points of view from the people that are in the room. One of the things that I love about living in this district is how diverse it is. So you identify an issue, you hear the multiple problems to it, and then we have to look at it. Is it a matter of funding, which I have expertise from my financial services career? Is it a matter of policy? Who took care of that? Who made that decision, and how is it affecting us? And then, or in the state legislature, understanding that this problem could not just occur in the 43rd, it's occurring in other districts that are similar to ours in terms of demographic and location. Working with my colleagues to be able to come together to develop a policy or to decide to create a funding line within the state budget by which we can address that problem.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Timothy, what makes you uniquely qualified? It separates you from the pack.
Thank you so much for this question. I think that what sets me apart from the rest of the candidates that we have on stage is that I'm an educator. I'm not a politician. I'm an organizer. I think that that's what I bring to the table. I've worked in various high schools all across the city teaching architectural drafting. I believe we should be doubling down in our investment in CTE programs so that our students, have multiple pathways to be able to be successful professionals. I'm the only person here that has worked in both houses of the legislature within the past 5 years. It's a much different day in Albany from what we know before. And I think it's important that we recognize that we need someone that's going to come in and know how to figure out how the assembly seat works on day one. I don't think we have time to be having people figure out how to, learn how to do, basically learn how to run an office, learn how to communicate with Assembly Central staff, learn how to communicate with their Senate counterparts, ensuring that we have everything that we need as a community at large. And then lastly, I think that as someone that has a young person in the community, I feel like we have an opportunity to encourage more young people to get involved and, make sure that we're doing everything we can to not only keep them in school, but encourage them to pursue higher learning, which is why I believe that we should be doubling down on our investments in CUNY. And I look forward to building more partnerships with other local organizations in this role in the future.
Thank you. And we're on first name basis now, right? Because we're all friends. So Jelani, what makes you uniquely qualified?
So I think what makes me uniquely qualified is that day one, I'm hitting the ground running. I think we have to be aware of the date of this special election. It's March 22nd. The budget is due April 1st. So whoever you send up to Albany has to dive right headfirst into a state budget negotiation and process. I don't think it's time to be willy-nilly here. It's time to send someone who knows how to get this done and who's done the work and also who's seen it firsthand. My work, not just in the city council, but also in the governor's office and working with our Assemblyman Danowitz and say Senator Zelda, I know how it operates. So you need to send someone who's going to be ready day one, and that's what sets me apart from the rest of the candidates. I have nothing but respect and adoration for the rest of the candidates, but you need someone who's going to be willing, who's going to be ready day one to dive in and negotiate a budget with the speaker, as long as with the Brooklyn delegation, and also come up against some real pressures from the governor's office and outside influence. You're going to need someone who's going to be independent and be able to stand up. And that's what separates me. I'm an independent voice, and that's what I'm looking to be. I'm an advocate for the community. I'm a voice for the community. You're going to need someone who's going to be ready day one. We have no time for training wheels or getting anything done. We have to dive in head first.
And Brian, what makes you uniquely qualified and separates you from the pack?
Yeah, I think when you look at what separates me from the pack, it's primarily four things. The four major issues that our district is currently facing, whether it be housing, whether it be criminal justice, whether it be education, or whether it be small business recovery, are areas that I've worked in not only in government, but also I've worked on the policy side. I'm also the only candidate in this race that has been fortunate to work on all three levels of government, both city, state, and federal. And I think some of the issues, particularly when we talk about housing, right? We talk about average median incomes all the time, but no one knows that that's a federal policy. It's not really a state policy. So when you talk about differentiating the lines of where you can create allies, both on different branches of government and exercising and pulling those lever points, that's something that I bring to the table. Again, working in Nazareth Housing, bringing over $2 million of supporting housing to communities, working in criminal justice, working at SOS Save Our Streets, reducing gun violence, but also at National Institute of Criminal Justice, making sure we actually put the right reforms in place to make sure that people that enter the system have a pathway out and a pathway when they get home, when they return home. Working on education, working as an advocate counselor in schools with kids who some folks deemed as unable to learn or unable to graduate, and making sure they had a pathway to graduate. And lastly, working with small business, creating with Councilman Robert Cornegie, Chamber on the Go, which brought the services of SBS to the doorsteps of small businesses who needed those services. So for me, it's having a well-rounded package of both working city, state, federal, and also working specifically on the four major issues that are affecting our community today.
Thank you. And Pierre?
So what makes me uniquely qualified, you are definitely correct. You need somebody who's ready on day one. I've been working at the governor's office of Reform Recovery for the last 7 years in the housing department, working on single family programs, rental properties programs, buyout and acquisition, and mobile homes. Over the past 7 years, I've gotten an opportunity to see what works for people and what doesn't work. I've gotten the opportunity to learn about housing policies at both the federal level and at the state level. And I've gotten an opportunity to see what happens when you pass a bill and how when it gets to a state agency, it doesn't necessarily turn out the way that people want it to turn out. So I'm uniquely qualified because having worked in the buyout and acquisition programs, in the rental properties program, in the single family programs, I understand how to craft policy, how to design programs that benefit residents, programs like the buyout and acquisition, where you buy up property, you fix it up, and then you put it out at a fair rate. This is what we need to do on the city and state level. We need to invest in buying up properties, right? Fixing it up and then putting it back out where people can actually afford it. That's what the other real estate developers are doing. There's no reason why we can't do it at the city and state level.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing my voice. So I'm going to turn it over to the next one, over to my co-district leader, AD Hermelin. Take it away.
Thank you, Sarana. It's good to see all of you. You guys have made great points tonight. As most of you know, I've been a tenant advocate and housing specialist over 20 years. And one of the top priorities throughout the city has been housing. in your role as state legislator, would you address the issue with development and sustainability of real affordable housing in the 43rd? I guess so we can start with Pierre Albert.
Thank you. Housing is definitely a huge issue. We shouldn't have a situation where people are afraid to open the mail and see what their new lease is like because they don't know if they're going to be able to stay in their home or if they're going to pack up and go. So we need a multi-pronged approach to housing, not just one solution, but multiple solutions. I offered one, but let's look at others. We need to empower nonprofit organizations and community-based organizations to be able to build affordable, fair property, give them incentives the same way we give incentives to real estate companies. We need to do away with 421A and go back to the drawing table. It's not working. Only having developers be binded to building properties that have 20% or 30% of affordable units. And that is not acceptable. As I've been going around door knocking, people are asking, how can I get into those buildings? So we did a multi-pronged approach. We also cannot neglect our NYCHA developments. I was born and raised in public housing. Those people matter. Just because they at a lower income level doesn't mean that they deserve to be treated any which way and how. Those are our future legislators. Those are our future teachers. Those are our future lawyers. So we need to invest in NYCHA. So housing is a multi-pronged approach.
Thank you, Pierre. Brian, same question.
This is a multi-pronged approach, I think, as Pierre said. So first, I think to all the candidates on the forum tonight, we should all co-author a letter and send it to the governor's office about the eviction moratorium that has expired more than almost 30 days ago. So we should all do that now. We don't have to wait to get elected to animate that issue. The second thing we ought to do is also ignite our commitment to good cause eviction and making sure the provisions also protect small landlords, but also making sure we protect many of the 92,000 people tonight that are sleeping in a shelter. Right now, as we have this forum, there are 92,000 people in the shelter and millions on the verge of homelessness. My old Jamaican mother has a saying, prevention is better than cure. So what do? Number one, we have to work with our city allies, our city council members, to make sure that we rezone areas that are zoned right now with zones that create high density apartments. And also on the 421A side, as Albert says, we have to repeal, not replace, not retweak it. We need to replace 421A. It is horrible. It incentivizes developers. It has an adverse effect not only on renters, where the 80-20 rule is concerned, where there's 80% of luxury and 20% of affordable. That's not really affordable in terms of the community median income, but average median income. So we got to also do that. But the last piece that we also, and also what we don't also realize with 421A that is really, really problematic is that it's having an impact on homeowners. We've seen homeowners whose property taxes have flown up 500% in the last 2 years, and now they're not losing their houses because they can't pay their mortgage, they can't pay their taxes. So this is a multi-pronged approach, and again, because I've worked on city, state, and federal, ready to hit the ground running and work with our federal partners on repealing how we look at our average median income and making that a community median income, working with our city council colleagues like Crystal Hudson and Councilman Marita Joseph, and making sure that we do something about development, particularly in areas where the zoning is off whack and creates these density projects. And obviously on the state level, we got to work on getting rid of 421A. And tonight, again, I'm committed, as well as I think some of you are nodding your head, that we're committed to talking to the governor about the eviction moratorium that expired almost 30 days ago. And also making sure good cause eviction protects tenants, but also protects small property owners.
Thank you, Brian. Jelani?
Yeah, thank you, AD, for that question. I think the system of giving developers tax breaks and hoping that they trickle down to renters is a broken system. And we definitely have to revamp that system and get rid of the system completely. I think incentivizing developers to be good actors has always led us to failure. We have to do it ourselves. So that's working with Congresswoman Yvette Clarke on the federal level, who's supportive of my campaign. Working with her to reform AMI, that's going to be truly reflective of zip codes, not just 5 or 10 zip codes put together, actual 11213, 11225. What is the median income in those specific zip codes, and targeting those specific zip codes? Then working on state level with Senator Zelno Amari to fully get rid of 421A and fully create a program that's actually going to be pro affordable housing and pro good development. That's what we need here. And also working on the city level and understanding how the city works within its own land use and rezoning. We have to understand all those elements. I understand all those elements. I'm looking to work together collaboratively, if elected, with all the members and also the housing advocates, and realizing that also we have to create housing, not just for the working class, but also the people who are currently stuck on the streets, I literally was at a train station 2 days ago, and I was walking up Notion Avenue back home, and they literally are evicting an entire building. I couldn't believe it. I literally walked up because I thought it was just one apartment. It said 1A to 4R, an entire building. We have to be proactive with this. I think we have to be realistic as well. When it comes to the eviction moratorium, I believe that as a state legislator, we also have to do our jobs. It is very easy to blame the governor, but also we have to remind ourselves that we also have the capability to introduce a bill to expand the eviction moratorium. So if the governor is unwilling to do it, we as a state legislature has to get it done. I don't believe in abdicating responsibilities. I believe in working with my members of the Assembly and of the Senate and introducing a bill to further extend the eviction moratorium that needs to be done today. And if it's not done today, when I get there, trust me, day one, it will be done.
Thank you, Jelani. Tim, you're on deck.
Thank you so much. I think the housing problem is an issue. As we highlighted before, over 80% of our district are renters. And a lot of the other candidates on the call have already mentioned 421A we need to scrap it. It's completely harming our communities, and it's costing us so much money, almost $1.7 billion in tax breaks going to the wealthy real estate is kind of like, now not going to our schools, not going to our hospitals, not going to our community, all because we want to give kickbacks to real estate developers. And I think it's time that we stop referring to it as affordable housing. We need low income housing in our community, and we shouldn't be accepting anything less than that. We're talking about a community where our average median income is like, hovering between $30,000 and $40,000. Our community is sometimes there's some members of our community that are not even making, levels above the federal poverty line. And I think it's important that we address these issues. And I think when we're talking about housing and a lot of the issues as it relates to housing, when people are displaced, it leads to homelessness. And I just want to say for the record, Governor Hochul, for allowing that eviction moratorium to expire, there's thousands and thousands of displacements that are going to be on her hands. And I think it's important that we also have a legislator that's going to hold her accountable, as well as our other leadership in the legislature, because of course it's not just one person that's responsible. We have to make sure we're holding everyone accountable for this. Secondly, the work that groups like Crown Heights Tenants Union is currently doing around housing organizing is important, but we need to make sure we're supporting them with legislation. We need to make sure that we're advocating not only for good cause eviction, which I fully support because I used to work for the state senator who is the sponsor of the bill in the Senate, but we also need to be advocating for TOPA. And we also need to make sure that we also need to prioritize that tenants have ownership in places where their buildings are being completely sold from underneath them. The building I live in has been sold a couple of times as well. And that's one of the places where we see a lot of displacement happen. A new owner comes in, tries to kick everyone out. We can't allow for property flipping to keep occurring inside our communities. And we have to do everything we can to make sure that we're presenting and we're given the best resources, to our tenants at large. And last thing I want to say, there's a very good tenant, housing access voucher program that's sponsored by Assemblymember Simowitz and also by Senator Kavanaugh. And I think that's also something that I would love to support once I become the next state legislator for this district.
Thank you, Timothy. And lastly, Sharon.
So I'm glad to hear that my fellow candidates are all in agreement that 421A, as it was originally instituted and as it's been amended, has been a disservice to our community. Totally. I mean, something else has to happen, but that's not it. We can't mend it. We have to introduce something new that looks at our serious issues, because in terms of affordable, what is affordable? Affordable to whom is something that I've always asked. I've recently become the chair of the Landmarks Committee, the Land Use Committee of Community Board 8. What does that mean? We're looking at quote unquote underutilized property, a light manufacturing zone that we made a proposal to the Department of City Planning so that we can have housing, so that we could have commercial enterprise and housing that allows for people that have that's tied to workforce wages, not the imagined affordable housing, not the imagined affordable housing that comes from the upward skewing of the incomes within our community, but for people who have lived here. And not only leaving people who are in NYCHA in terms of services, in terms of repair, in terms of access and safety, but understanding those people are very important, because you're absolutely right, Pierre. Those are the people who become judges, who become doctors, who become lawyers, and even people who want to represent their communities in state legislature, in city government, and at the federal government. But here's the thing, people act as if you have housing, you're good. You don't want to have the opportunity to move up. have a nicer house, a larger apartment, and be able to send your kids to the best schools possible. We don't have those programs anymore. It used to be you transition from NYCHA to maybe a Mitchell Lama development, which is what Starrett City was. And there's several apartments in other parts of the district that offer a good quality of life because we have a solid community. The other thing that we have to say is that absolutely, not only are we seeing homelessness with evictions, we're seeing people that are displaced because they're doubled and tripled up with families. And you know what really upsets me about that? The children in those families are the ones that are most affected. They're the ones that have to travel far away from their home schools because schools become an anchor, which makes schools all the more important in the lives of families in our community. And I have to say, we have to do better with how we're schooling our children. Last but not least, let's look at some of the deals the developers have been cutting, right? Look at how they are trying to push this rise in property taxes because they say they want fairer taxes. They want us, the common everyday people, to subsidize their endeavors. What we have to say here and now is absolutely not, because if we keep raising property taxes in central Brooklyn communities, what's going to happen? Not only do the present owners, people of my parents' generation, right, people that are my age are not going to be able to afford it, but we will be unable to pass on that generational wealth to our children. What did our forefathers make the sacrifices for ownership?
Thank you very much, Sharon. All of you answered the question greatly. So I want to pass the next question on to our moderator, Jermaine Isaac.
Good evening, everyone. So I want to touch base on education. As an educator myself and a principal in training, I've had many encounters this last 2 years and during COVID. And this is one particular question I'd like to ask each candidate. Educators bear witness to many interlocking systems of adversity. Students may feel insecure, encountering mental health concerns, unhoused, undocumented, and more. For years, schools have been used as a band-aid for these many problems our children face. Even now with the COVID pandemic, there is a digital and academic divide, such as access to Wi-Fi and remote learning options. How would you advocate and deliver for your constituents in Albany as they relate to these issues? And we're going to start with Mr. Albert.
Thank you. I think during the pandemic, we really saw the value of our schools. And I think no one really understood just how much teachers had to do, right? Not only were they educators and had to teach certain subjects, but a lot of times they were counselors, they were advising students, they were guiding them. And teachers have been underpaid. They have been severely underpaid. So one thing that we need to do is make sure that there is fairness and equity across our school systems. We have to make sure that schools are properly funded and that they have the proper technology, they have the proper resources, they have the laptops that can be given to students, iPads when they have remote learning, that they are not put in a situation where they're not able to absorb the material. So our schools are underfunded, and we need to make sure that they are funded, particularly in the inner schools.
Thank you. We're going to go to Mr. Brian Cunningham.
Yeah, so obviously high-speed internet is a huge issue in terms of the digital divide that's taking place in our communities. Back in 2017, I called for this as well, and I'll call for it again, is that we do more to lift the cap on who can provide service where. Right now in the community of the 43rd Assembly District, Optimum Online is the primary sponsor of internet service. And obviously with that, there are also tier services where you have to tier up to get high-speed internet. We definitely have to adjust that. And again, some of these subsidies that we provided through 421A, some of the tax subsidies that are offsetting developer taxes for 25 years, needs to be reinvested back in education into our schools, so that we can provide more resources for our schools, our teachers, and also make the capital repairs in buildings. Obviously, as a state legislator, one of the things you have the luxury of is capital funding, and making sure that we use our capital funding to retrofit schools post-COVID to make sure there's access to high-speed internet, as well as our communities, and make sure that internet flows to those communities so that folks can do hybrid learning, both teachers and students.
Thank you, Brian. And we're going to now go to Jelani.
Thank you for that question, Jermaine. I think, listen, as the son of an educator, trust me, I hear it firsthand every day from my mother, who constantly yells at me that the lack of historic investment at schools right here in the community, schools that I went to, PS 138, PS 241, even Prospect Heights High School, where I went to high school. I think we see firsthand our teachers are severely underpaid and overworked. And I think we have to do better by our teachers. Most important, we have to do better by our students as well. I think it's absolutely an embarrassment that we have schools that are still crumbling to this day, that I went to when I was 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, and I was a 30-year-old man. To see the same buildings struggling today is an absolute embarrassment. I believe it's also working with our member of city council. I think Rita Joseph, as the education chair, working with her to make sure that we target these schools in our community and make sure that we bring actual technology to the schools. I believe every New York City public school student should have access to either an iPad or a laptop. I believe we need to make that happen, and also working to make sure they actually have those services at home. And it's very good to talk about hybrid, but you have to also realize a lot of people live in communities, such as some NYCHA residents or even low-income residents, who can't even afford to have a Wi-Fi in their homes. So we have to make sure that actually the computers and the laptops that we're giving out actually already have built-in Wi-Fi and built-in internet with them, so we could definitely have hybrid learning. And when it comes to the physical infrastructure of schools, we need to do a better job of expediting capital monies to make sure these projects get done on time. I spoke to a principal yesterday at the train station while handing out some lit, and she told me she got money 7 years ago. 7 years ago, she got capital money to redo her auditorium. She's still waiting for the money today. That is an absolute embarrassment, and we have to do better. So if elected, I'll make sure that every school in my district gets the money they deserve, and not just they deserve, but make sure they get it on time. And also, just to broaden out just a little bit more, when it comes to providing full services to our students, I believe also making public schools and public school buildings full-time community development centers and bringing resources to the people where they are. I believe right now we're in a very unique position when it comes to coming out of COVID and the issues that we've seen. We need to make that happen right now, right here in the mighty 43rd. And that's something that I would champion, not just in the 43rd, but all across the city of New York.
Thank you, Jelani. And we're going to go right into Tim, followed by Sharon.
Thank you so much. I mean, thank you so much for the question, Jermaine. Growing up, coming out of high school, I wanted to be a principal myself. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking that leap and looking forward to seeing the amazing principal that you'll become. My mom is an educator. I worked in the Department of Ed myself. So I know firsthand the struggles that our students are faced with. I remember like standing in first period, waiting for students to come in and seeing that one student that always comes late because they had to drop their sibling off, or seeing that one student that came late because they had to stay home and babysit, or seeing the student that may not come or may not make it because something went down in their shelter and they weren't able to make it to school that day. So when we talk about housing, when we talk about access to childcare, and when we talk about investing in our communities, all these things directly tie into investment in our schools. Not only that, but our schools have been shortchanged for far too long. Governor Cuomo and now Governor Hochul owes billions of dollars in foundation aid to our schools. And there's a reason for that. And there's a reason why our schools aren't invested in as much as the other schools in Long Island or the other schools upstate. And we have to realize that investment in education is an equity issue, and we need to treat it as such. It is structural racism. There's a reason why our students aren't getting the resources they deserve and other students are. And I think that it's important that we highlight that, number one, and first and foremost. Number two, we have to make sure our students have opportunities post high school and post, middle school. And that's investing in CUNY. I worked very closely with the PSC and other unions to make sure we introduced a new deal for CUNY, because I believe that CUNY should be free again. And it should be accessible to all students, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of creed, regardless of background, and regardless of personal upbringing. I think we need to do everything we can to make sure our public education stays public. And we have to do everything we can to also endorse and make sure that we're prioritizing, CUNY and our Department of Education schools, because these schools pay for themselves. There are reports that show that City College generates almost $1.8 billion for the New York State economy as a whole. So why can't we double down on our investment in CUNY schools? Why can't we have Medgar Evers be a top class CUNY school instead of having trailers that have been there for 30 decades since my mom attended Medgar Evers? I think it's important that we take a step back and we look at education not as just a problem that no one wants to touch because of the budget, but as something that we need to lean into and have a conversation with the governor, have a conversation with the leadership, and let them know this is an equity issue that needs to be fixed right away. And that's something I'm willing to prioritize on day one.
So I guess it's my turn. And I have to say, you know what? Being last, too many people take the words out of my mouth. So I'll just say that I've been the youth and education chair for a number of years. And one of the things that when we, at the start of the pandemic, the night before schools were going to be closed, one of the things that we huddled, and these are parent leaders and community board members talking about how we're going to deploy the resources for the children. The deployment of resources, right, does not mean everybody gets the same. It means that you get what needs to meet the needs of your community. One thing's for certain, we definitely didn't have enough access for Wi-Fi. One thing's for certain, shelters were not wired for Wi-Fi, and we had to immediately make the strong case that these that shelters within our district were going to be the first recipients, not only of Wi-Fi enabled devices, but the MiFi, so that we would be able to have the access to the Wi-Fi. We have all kinds of problems. You talk about services that are determined by the Wi-Fi providers, right? Whereas it's not meeting our needs, it's meeting their corporate needs. And the thing is, to make it more accessible to everybody else, price has to come down. It has to be an essential utility. And right now it's viewed as something that's optional. It's not optional. You cannot function in this world if you don't have access to Wi-Fi. So making sure that everyone, we talk about foundational aid, and we also talk about the historic problem, which is really not historic. Public education in New York City was not K through 12, it was K through 16, and that was the continuum. And they made bad policy decisions in the 1970s based upon money, and we're still stuck with those policy decisions. So having the continuum like we have in a school where P-TECH, where somebody graduates with an associate degree, making sure that we have access to Wi-Fi no matter where you're located and at a price that one's pocketbook could afford.
Thank you so much to each of you. We're going to now transition from education to public safety with Serena.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to just, interest of time, ad-lib the question. But as you guys know, public safety has been a major issue that have impacted our community and the city overall. So what is your plan to, as a state legislator, to address public safety in pertaining to gun violence while ensuring that you maintain social justice rights of individuals? How do you combine the two? And how do you make it work to ensure that communities are safe? And I'm going to actually start off with Timothy.
No worries. Thank you so much for the question. I think it's a very important one to have. I think a lot of us understand and know firsthand that over-policing does not solve all the issues. And we need to make sure we're taking a real look at how we're investing in our communities, because the safest communities are the ones that have the most resources, not the most police. And I think it's important that when we recognize that, we're able to now change the narrative. I know Brian had done some amazing work with Save Our Streets, organizations like that, Man Up, and other groups that have been doing a lot of cure violence and violence interruptions in our communities have actually helped to make our communities safer. There's actually a report that came out from John Jay College of Criminal Justice that goes to show that when we have these programs in our communities do become safer. And, you know, I think it's important that when we talk about guns, as I said in prior debates, guns aren't growing on trees here. Actually, and from 2010 to 2015, 75% of the guns that were picked up by the NYPD were coming from out of state. And I think when we kind of talk about how we work with other states, that's the job of the state legislature, to make sure we're passing stricter gun laws and also pushing for other states to do that. And we have to make sure we're holding the gun manufacturers accountable because they're creating these guns, they're getting a profit off of it, but then it's our brothers and sisters that are dying in the community. There's no reason why, as a 22-year-old man turning 23 next month, I've attended more candlelight vigils than graduations in this community. I think it's important that we double down on our investment in our young people and make sure that we give alternatives, so that way we have after-school programs that support our young people. We're doubling down on our investing in our schools to make sure that they can serve as resource hubs. And once we do that, I think we'll have a much safer community. And last thing I want to say is public safety goes hand in hand with accountability. So if we're going to be making sure that we're making our community safe, we also got to make sure we're helping the people that are coming out of the carceral system and ensuring that they have better re-entry programs so that they can come back into a safer community here. And I'm looking forward to supporting all those efforts in the future.
Jelani?
Yep, thank you for that question, Swan. I couldn't agree more. I think this goes hand in hand. I think also we have to think about when you remove the gun from someone's hand, what are you replacing what are you replacing that gun with? I think that's the most important question. It's very good to talk about the iron pipeline that's leading here to New York, but we have to hit people where it matters. That's on the streets, and sometimes within the confines of their own home. We have to also admit that we're coming through a pandemic. A lot of people have issues that are going on behind closed doors that we have to have real heart-to-heart conversations with. And that's something that we have to do. We have to invest in SNUG services, SOS, and CAVI, and groups like that who do work and are on the ground every day. But also we have to really invest in mental health services and really acknowledge the problems that are going on behind closed doors. Also, most importantly, we also realize people's economic statuses. I think a lot of people feel that people carry a gun for safety or to feel tough. I grew up in a community where I knew I couldn't walk down Carroll Street, or I couldn't go to Franklin Avenue if I wanted to hang out with my friends. It's also understanding that as well. You have to have culturally competent people leading these efforts and having the culturally competent conversation really on a high level. And that's what has to happen. I knew when I left Prospect Heights, I couldn't walk towards Franklin Avenue. I had to walk towards Brooklyn Museum because I knew if I walked towards Franklin Avenue, it would have been a problem. We have to understand that and really hone in on that. We also have to provide young people like myself and Tim. I'll include myself as a young person and as a young person as well. We have to make sure that we have to realize not everyone is going to go to college. So we have to make sure, work with the unions and bring trade programs and trade schools back to the community. We need electricians, we need plumbers, we need barbers. We need to make sure that people feel a sense of pride of having a 9-to-5 once again. I believe for too long, we believe the Instagram life. It looks flashy to be a gangster, but listen, a 9-to-5 job ain't gonna kill you. So we have to make sure that we invest in our young people and keep it going. I fully believe in also being on the streets and not just the person pulling the trigger, but the person being shot, their family, and also the person doing the shooting as well. It's a multi-pronged approach, and we have to have real people at the table to have conversations. That means pulling all the groups together. That means pulling the police department together and realize we cannot law enforcement our way out of this. We cannot arrest our way out of this. We got to legislate. We got to get the money, bring it to the community faster, and also have very difficult conversations. I think that's really the crux of the issue here.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Brian?
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, I think everyone's kind of said the same thing in terms of one of the programs I was fortunate to work for 3 years was Save Our Streets Brooklyn, one of the 21 cure violence sites throughout the city of New York. From a state perspective, that's a $250,000 investment, and we ought to invest more from the state into more communities, into more precincts in our communities to make sure that those wraparound services, not only the interrupters and the outreach workers, which are the visible manifestation of the work of hiring those credible messengers to be in the streets, but also the mental health service they provide, the food insecurities they also fill the gaps of, and also the opportunity to become community hubs where young people can gather, learn, create, and get particular certifications and licenses is really important. So for me, it's two things. It's making sure we invest more money there and make sure that every precinct, not just selected precincts, have those resources, but every precinct has those resources in our district and throughout the state of New York. Secondly, making sure that we have a robust after-school program that continues to keep the doors open. There's no reason why we're pushing kids out at 3 o'clock when these buildings can be open until 7, 8 o'clock at night when parents are coming home so they can do their homework and get extracurricular activities. And the other piece is we have to obviously reduce our criminal justice system, improve the services, and reinvest those reduction costs into the communities. For far too long, we've all been talking about equity in this conversation. And the reality is communities that are under-resourced, underserved, have the highest degrees of crime. There's a great book by Jeffrey Canada that talks about guns, knives, rocks, fists. And it says if you don't fix the crux of the problem, that people will find a new tool. So today is a gun problem, tomorrow will be a knife problem, the next day will be a fist problem. But unless we fix the issues like conflict mediation and teaching that in our curriculum, then we won't get to the crux of the matter. So we have to make sure we do more in making sure those services, both social work services, therapy is a part of built into the curriculum, and also conflict mediation is also built into that curriculum, and make sure that we reduce this problem.
Thank you. Pierre?
Thank you. Crime is a major issue. So when I was growing up, I actually was jumped twice. Once at Lincoln Terrace Park and once on Utica Avenue. Not because I was a gang member, not because I was caught up with the wrong person, with the wrong people. I was just walking down the street. And 10 years later, yeah, I'm showing my age, 10 years later, people are still suffering from that same trauma. And when I was jumped, I was afraid to go to school. I was afraid to leave my house. And we have people in our community that have had traumatic experiences. And we need to protect this community. We need to partner with our local precincts. We need to coordinate with our schools, but we also need to make sure that we have after-school programs that allow students to have job training programs, allow students the opportunity to learn about careers, create a pathway for them to get internships. We also need to create a safe space for our students, right? So a lot of students who end up joining gangs are because they are trying to find a family. So we need to create safe spaces and safe places for them to go. Also, we need.
You froze? Technical issue?
It's the internet.
It's the internet. We'll give him a moment.
Well, we need high-speed internet now, no?
Yeah. I know we need some internet now. Okay. I want to make sure he finished his point, but while he's unmuted, while he gets Wi-Fi situated, Sharon.
Sure, I'll jump in.
Is he okay?
Is he back?
No, I think he hopped off.
He's
Okay.
okay.
So,
I'll
you know,
get
one
his
of
last when he comes back. Yeah.
one of the things that we all agree is that we need a multi-pronged approach to this issue. So here's the question, the heart of the question: bad policy decisions. And you know, policy decisions are made in the state legislature. Why is it okay to have no-go zones? And I do remember the time when you could not walk down Franklin Avenue, and I'll finish. And what it took was community intervention, community interdiction. It took people from different communities working together to lay down the things that we needed to be able to have the safety along those corridors. Another thing that happens is that when door knocking, the question that I hear the most from young men is, "Miss, do you know where I can get a job?" They don't necessarily want to pick up the guns, but the opportunities that are available to them lead them to either fear for their personal safety, or it is the means by which they can provide for their family. And that's something that has to change. The opportunities when someone says, "Miss," because I know this guy that was involved in, let's just say, non-tax dollar activities. And one of the proudest days he had is when he could tell me, "You know what, Miss Wedderburn, I got a job. I can take my children and have them come to the office," right? So when we talk about our values, what we're going to do within the community to make it safer, it's definitely restorative justice. It's definitely working to make sure that we have more job opportunities at various levels. Everybody doesn't go to college, and Lord knows many people who go to college are afraid when they get a bill from the plumber or the electrician because they're making money. We have to create those avenues and bring the CTE programs back to the schools in our community. Last and most importantly, over-policing has not worked for our community. It's appropriate policing. We have some places within our community that, truthfully, there's a recreation center, St. John's Recreation Center. The adults get kicked out in the afternoon. We're not allowed to come back until the kids are finished after 6 o'clock, right? But we don't have enough of those opportunities for our young people so they have models by which they can live their lives.
Thank you for that, Sharon. And I am going to hand it back over to Jermaine. I believe everyone got a chance to answer correctly. Did Pierre, do you want to finish your point?
Yes, just a couple
Yes,
of things. I think I'm in need of that high-speed internet. But the points that I wanted to make when it comes to gun violence prevention is we need to continue to fund our after-school programs. We also need to go after the gun traffickers, right? So we need to change the state law that it shouldn't just be if you're trafficking 10 guns, let's bring it down to 3 and let's increase the penalties for intent of gun trafficking.
Thank you for that. We also received additional questions from the audience. I'm now going to turn it over back to our moderator, Jermaine, to go to some audience questions that we have received so far. And after that, we're going to end up doing like a rapid fire kind of section. Everyone could kind of loosen up, relax. Pierre, where is he? Can't see. Oh, Jermaine, I'll let you take it away with the first question that we received via email.
Yes. So these questions were generated from the audience via email. And our first question is going to be, first of all, each candidate, you'll have 1 minute to respond, 1 minute. And we're going to start in the order of alphabetical order, starting with last name. So first question, We continually be deeply saddened by a loss of our associated supermarket in the district. Have you considered bringing back some sort of market that would be especially necessary for those who are older and those who have to walk to Winthrop and Nostrand or Lincoln Market can be strenuous? What is your plan to bring back the supermarkets? And we'll start with Cunningham.
Thank you. So, is it
I'm sorry, my last name. I'm sorry.
yeah. Thank you. So I personally experienced the loss of supermarkets. We lost a supermarket on my block, and now I have to walk a little bit further. So we definitely need to work with local. We definitely need to work with people who want to be entrepreneurs. We need to work with small business owners, and we need to make sure that they have the proper funding. We need to make sure they have the proper access to grants. We need to make sure that they have the proper access to loans. And every community should have a healthy supermarket in walking distance. We have a health crisis in our community. Every community should have a healthy supermarket in walking distance, and should also have a gym in walking distance. So we definitely need to work with the local small business owners and make sure that they have the information that is available for them by hosting workshops and hosting seminars, so that they don't have to go searching for the information.
Thank you, Pierre. All right, Brian.
Currently living in a food apartheid in central Brooklyn. This is happening all over central Brooklyn, where it is deliberate pulling out of resources such as food and fresh food in our communities. COVID-19 certainly exacerbated health crises, but we know that the underlying causes is the lack of access to healthy food. So certainly in 15 minutes of each community, we should have parks, we should have supermarkets. We can't just have coffee shops. We love them in our communities and bars, but we have to have things that are feeding the nutrients of our communities and making sure that folks are healthy. So absolutely, let's work with the developers as they're putting new buildings online to make sure that we have a plan for bringing the resources we need in our community, schools and supermarkets.
Thank you, Brian. Jelani?
I think this is pretty simple. I think we need healthy, affordable food options. And that's why I think we have to stress the affordable part. I think that's what's the leading cause of food insecurity right here in the heart of the 43rd. I spent many times when I was working at Downstate, working at food pantries with people who work at Downstate, who make a decent salary, who couldn't even afford food. So I think we have to make sure that it's healthy food, but also affordable food for the people of our residents. And also making sure, listen, maybe working with developers, but we need to go out there and seek healthy, affordable food options. If it's working with the city harvest, if it's working with other organizations to maybe even just create our own Black-owned, minority-owned, and ran supermarket in the heart of the 43rd. I'm willing to work with whoever and finding a location that's amenable to my community, especially the seniors who are the hardest hit when it comes to food insecurity. We need to make sure there's a plan. So I'm willing to work with anyone, not developers. I'm willing to work with anyone in the community, minority-owned, city harvest, whatever you got. I want to work with them to find a location that's going to be reflective and accessible to everyone in the community.
Thank you, Jelani. Tim?
I think this is a very important question. I remember when I worked in the assembly member's office, the Associated Supermarket was right up the block on Nostrand until it got closed down. And I remember reading an article about it, and the same exact real estate group that put 626 Flatbush up is the same group that bought out that Associated Supermarket. And there was multiple people on record, right? Because everybody's always there to put a quote out. Even former Borough President Eric Adams was saying, well, I know that this is important to the district. Let's see, I'm going to work to put a farmer's market there. And I'm going to work to make sure we shuttle people back and forth so that they don't have to go all the way to, Western Beef on Empire to go get food. I haven't seen a farmer's market yet, and I think it's important that we're using our position here to make sure we're holding these people accountable. He's the mayor of New York City now. You can't tell me that he can't help us to put a farmer's market in a food desert in the heart of central Brooklyn, where he has basically grew up himself. And I think it's important that we do everything we can to make sure we're holding the people in power accountable, because this is the health of our community that we're talking about. This is the aging population that we're talking about here that can't walk 15, 20 minutes, even if they wanted to. And I think it's important that we do everything we can to bring fresh produce and bring resources back, because even if we do food distributions from now till next year, it's not going to be enough to fill the baskets and the pantries of every single resident of this district. We need better options, and as Jelani said, we do need more affordable options.
Thank you, Tim. And we're going to go to Sharon.
So one of the things that's certain is that the large supermarket companies, their business model just doesn't work for our community. It's based on how much money they're going to be able to make within our community. Paying $1 for a navel orange for a family tells you that a mother is not going, with a limited income, is not going to choose to buy oranges or much other fresh fruit. So one of the solutions is, and this was proposed by the Brooklyn Movement Center, is we actually need food cooperatives, food cooperative models that speak to the needs and the desires of our community. Some people eat different food. You know, people will look at asparagus. It might be healthy, but that's never been served in my household. I grew up in Jamaica, someone might say. But what we do know is that everyone knows how to provide for themselves in terms of selecting options. The options aren't available. So having a food cooperative, making sure that we use either we have public land or that a condition of a developer is that they're going to have to provide square footage such that we're able to build this from the ground up. Seniors have issues with mobility. We don't have wide aisles in the Associated. We have spoiled food in Western Beach, and that's absolutely unacceptable. And that's policy that we have to look at, working at the city in terms of land, working at the state in terms of creating incentives, and using our local will, our local talent, and our local knowledge, knowing that these programs, these companies, their models just don't mean to feed us well.
Each of you have all answered this question very well, and I can see the responses are going in the chat. I'm going to go dive right into our next question. This question is picking back to what we discussed about education earlier. Many in the chat were discussing after-school programs, and we also have an audience question here. Too many young people are leaving high school without the literacy necessary to handle the forever-changing job markets, let alone college access. Can you describe how you plan to create or bring specialized vocational and technical high schools or programs where students can attain marketable skills upon graduation, and where can they enter apprenticeships? We're going to go in the same order.
Was it me first? I think it was me first. No, it wasn't me first.
Pierre?
Gotcha.
Thank you. So every school should be able to have a partnership that allows their students to be able to have an internship. When I was in high school, I interned at the age of 17, if you could believe it, for Congressman Towns. And I got the opportunity to learn how to write constituent letters. I got the opportunity to learn how to pick up phone calls, how to answer emails. And then also I was a part of the Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Program. And it also had a program where we allowed to write our resumes. It also gave people part-time jobs where they cut them stipend checks. So every school should have a partnership that allows their students to have job training programs. It used to be about the type of college that you went to, going to an Ivy League school. But now it's about what skill set you have. And I believe as early as middle school, we should have job training programs for our students. When I was in middle school, I took a computer apart and put it back together again, and they let me go home with that computer. So we need to bring in experts into the schools. It shouldn't just be that you have math, science, and reading. No, technical skills should be a part of the school curriculum. And we also need to expand our early college programs, allow students to be more students to be able to take college classes in high school. So.
Thank you. All right, Brian.
Thank you so much for that question. It's a really important question. Many don't know, but the DOE has an office called the Office of Multiple Pathways. I had the privilege to interact with this office when I was 18 years old. It was my first job working at Canberra Learning to Work programs. Many of these Learning to Work programs, unfortunately, only said that if a young person was not academically ready to graduate, they would get access to vocational training. I believe that everyone should have access to vocational training. One of the privileges of being a state government is the ability to issue state licensing. So a lot of young people aren't looking to go work a 9 to 5. Some young people are looking to start their own business, whether that be in real estate, whether that be barbering, whether that be whatever it is. The state has the power to actually issue state licenses, which allows people to go out and start their own business. We ought to make sure that as a state government, since we're also in charge of education, we implement that in schools so that kids are not just leaving with a degree in hand, but also a certification that is a license that they can go out there and start their own business at 18 years old when they're finished school. Last thing I'll say on this is obviously working with our brothers and sisters in labor and creating apprenticeship programs as well. But certainly we got to bring back the learning to work programs widespread throughout all schools. We used to call it co-op for old heads on the call, but also making sure that we use the licensing programs to allow young people to get a license and a degree and then graduate and join the apprenticeship program.
Thank you, Brian. Jelani?
Thank you for that question. Listen, I couldn't agree more. I think it's something I think most importantly is working with the New York State Department of Labor, who actually is in charge of certifying all the apprenticeship programs. And they're also working with the DOE, the city DOE and BOCES are all across the state to create an actual pipeline. I believe a lot of unions right now want, especially them coming into the green economy and all these new jobs. We have to be ready to tackle that tomorrow. So I think it's working with the unions, working with the Department of Labor, and also working just with the DOE to make sure that there's an adequate pipeline. So for example, we don't have to wait till we can figure out pretty early and also give kids the option. You know, I had the option of saying, hey, John, where do you want to go? So I say, oh, political science, that's my route. So great, do these classes. But if someone knows at an early age, or even in I have family who go to school in Europe, at a very early age, they create a pipeline for you for your desired career path. I think that's the way we have to look at it. We need to make adequate pipelines. That's the way that I think about it all the time. That's the way I think about it all the time. So we have to make sure we work with the Department of Labor, working with unions who are out there looking for new apprenticeships, if it's carpenters, if it's laborers, but we have to work all together to get it done.
Tim?
Well, I mean, when we're talking about vocational education, I'm the only CTE teacher here. I think that when we're talking about being in the classroom and understanding firsthand what our students need, I taught architectural drafting for 4 years. So I know firsthand what it takes to teach, 13, 14, 15-year-olds skills that can help them to make money for the rest of their lives, help them to provide for their families, help them to provide for their communities. I went to a CTE school. And as Brian mentioned before, that's what vocational schools was, right? If you weren't really good with your academics, you were able to go and like learn a trade. Now it's changed. CTE schools actually have only industry partners, but also post-secondary partners. So I was able to get my associate's degree. I heard Sharon speak about the P-Tech models earlier. I went to a P-Tech school from 9 through 16. Our students are graduating at age 20, age 21 with an associate's degree. And I think that it's important that we do everything in our power to double down on this investment. And a lot of that also comes from the federal government in the form of VITEA funding. So hopefully working with our congressional partners in Representative Clark, as well as Representative Jeffries and Representative Velasquez, to ensure that we have adequate funding for our CTE schools, and making sure that you don't need to pass a specialized high school just to get access, a specialized high school exam just to get access to them. A lot of our high schools are doing just fine, and we should just be adding the CTE programs as a component after talking to parents, working with SLTs and PTAs to make sure that we're addressing the needs for the job force in our community so that people can stay in our community. And I think that's important when we talk about investing in vocational schools.
Thank you, Tim. Sherry?
So once again, we have to, I think we're all in agreement. We need to form partnerships and create pipelines, partnerships, especially with unions. But if you look at the schools within our district, those CTE schools have been virtually stripped of their programming. Instead of just trying to ramp up to what it used to be, let's look at where we actually have the need in terms of job opportunities and the need in terms of people wanting to learn particular skills. We can expand our schools. Once upon a time, you were able to go to night school. If you went to work, you wanted to finish your high school diploma, or you wanted to learn other skills, typing, bookkeeping, of that genre. What we need to do is have a model within our district that we can have a comprehensive high school. And what does that mean? A high school that works beyond the traditional hours of operation, something that someone who has a 9 to 5 can go to school from 6 to 9 to learn a school or expand their skill set. Also with that, you have to consider that we have to have the opportunities on weekends as well. So one of the things that a comprehensive school will do, it will open also pathways to higher learning. We can form partnerships with our local colleges. Something at a state level of programming will happen from a comprehensive school to something like Medgar Evers College to bring somebody into a nursing program, because we have to look at the areas where there are critical needs and provide those needs within our community. DOL is certainly a good option, as Jelani had mentioned, but we have to understand the perception in our district is that we don't have students of that caliber. Our job is to prove them wrong and make sure we give everybody the opportunity to excel so they might be able to meet the requirements of the job market.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you everyone who shared out and responded to that question. I'm going to now hand it over to Saranda for another 1 minute quick question, and then we're going to go into rapid questions to close out.
Okay, thank you very much. So we received a couple of questions regarding the tax lien. So what is your position, including one and two family homes on the New York City tax lien sale program, and also third-party transfers, right? So as you know, we're a district of many homeowners, 1-2 family homes. This is an ongoing issue that many people on the north side of Crown Heights has faced, as well as many areas, parts of the districts. So what is your position on 1 to 2 family homes in the New York tax lien sale programs? And I'm going to start with Pierre.
Sure. So I think even though we have a district that is majority tenants, if you speak to the homeowners, they feel like they're neglected, right? To buy a home, it's like $1 million. And a lot of people can't even afford to stay in their homes. There are people who are moving out of their homes and moving into apartment buildings. So what we need to do is make sure that we keep the property taxes low for single family homeowners. We also need to make sure that these homes are not going up for auction. So we need to keep their taxes low. And to do that, we also need to correct our tax policy. Those who are buying homes and selling it, we need to make sure that we keep the flip tax in place. And we also need to make sure that those that have second homes or those that have homes in other parts are also properly being taxed so that we can keep the taxes low for single family homeowners, and that they're not being put up for auctions, and that their homes are not being taken away from them, that people are not buying up their liens. That's what's happening around the district. Many businesses, many corporations are buying up the liens of these homes, and people are losing their homes, and they're putting it out there, and they're constructing property and creating luxury units.
Thank you. Brian?
Apologies for that. Yeah, so obviously in terms of these tax liens and these taxes that have grown exponentially, as I mentioned earlier, people have seen their property taxes go up 500%. These tax liens are out of control. It's a city issue, but certainly as a state legislator, you can animate, echo, and stand in solidarity. Certainly we've seen a lot of burden placed on some of the smaller homeowners, and we have to make sure that obviously that we protect smaller homeowners and make sure that the tax lien situation is rectified, as well as when owners are ready to sell, that we don't do third-party transfers. But I think Tim mentioned earlier, TOPA, the tenant opportunity to purchase, is something that I think Senator Myrie is championing in the state Senate right now. It's something that we ought to support.
Thank you for that. Jelani?
Yeah, I think plain and simple, the New York City tax system is fundamentally broken. And I think the repercussions of that and the impact of that are Black and brown communities who have worked very hard to create generational wealth. I think we have to address this issue head on. And that's working with the current mayor. That's also working with members of city council to fully revamp the New York City tax system. I think the last time it was revamped was 1977. And it's time to really address this issue, to really sort of, listen, to me, I think for me as someone who wants to not just live in this community, but thrive in this community, I want to have the opportunity to own a house. I want my kids have the opportunity to own a house in this community. So this needs to be a laser focus for not just anyone seeking this seat, but anyone seeking to represent this community in any capacity. We need to make sure this is a laser focus. If it's more funding for first-time homeowners, also protecting current homeowners who also themselves, a lot of homeowners are also small landlords who've been hit doubly as hard during this pandemic. We have to do everything we can do to protect homeowners right here in the 43rd Assembly District. And that's something I'm going to be laser focused on day one.
Tim?
Thank you so much for this question. I do want to acknowledge that the city council plays a huge role in this just overall. So I think it's important that we work with our counterparts in, the council, again, the council member Joseph, as well as council member Hudson, as also with the redistricting council member, Chio Say, who I think is going to be phenomenal in the council as well. So we definitely have to work with them as it relates to dealing with the tax lien issue. And again, like I'm a big supporter of the flip tax, which would not allow for property flipping to occur in our communities at the rate that it currently does. People buying 2 or 3 brownstones or 2 and 3 single family homes in a row and being able to just knock them down and just build up on top of it. I think it's important that we're doing everything we can to stop displacement from happening in our communities, because it's happening at an alarming rate. Even though I am a lifelong tenant. I've always lived in an apartment. I understand the importance of preserving Black home ownership, and I do look forward to continuing to do that in this role. However, I do also just want to highlight the fact that we need to do everything we can to also bolster tenant protections. I don't think we should have to pick between lowering property taxes and protecting our tenants. We should be able to do both. And also, I just want to use this as a shameless plug to talk about the Con Edison rates. I think that this all is under the umbrella of cost of living that is way too high in our district. My mom paid $200, $300 for Con Edison 1 month, and now she got a bill for $900 last month. These are issues that we should all be vocally talking about and committing to addressing no matter what the outcome of this election is.
Thank you. Sharon?
I unmuted myself. Originally, the question was geared around third-party transfers. I have to make it very clear, third-party transfers were never intended for 1 and 2 family homes. And this is something that happened again as a favor of the real estate interests by previous mayoral administrations. And here's what's really happened. Investors are now allowed to pick up properties in neighborhoods, not whether or not the property is really distressed. Everyone has a problem. Someone may have a problem with paying the water bill or forgotten the water bill. There's no reason why you should lose your home for $1,000 when your home is worth $1 million. Plain and simple, that's theft. And theft of that nature cannot be allowed in our community. Taxes are a city issue, but at the state level, we have to make sure that there's intervention such that we provide a safety net for our homeowners, for our small property owners, because we also have to remember the small property owners are the largest provider of homes that meet the needs of our community in terms of wages. If you are living in a building with someone, the chances of you trying to drive up their rent, you form a personal relationship. You know their children. Why would you do something like that? Because that's destabilizing the community. And last but not least, we should make sure that any investor group that invests in buying liens will have a high price to pay to do this in the city. And what that means is that we just make sure we price them out of that business rather than they price us out of our homes.
Thank you for that. Now we're going to go on to our next section. The time now is 8:30. I want you guys to loosen up. I know it's been like an hour and a half, so I have to stretch a little bit. I'm sorry. I can't. But we're going to go into some rapid questions because we love to hear your policy ideas. We want to get a sense of who you are, right? The next selling person, they're going to be in our communities. They're going to be in our streets. They're going to be in our schools. So we want to make sure that we have a sense of, who you are and get a little bit of an inside scoop, so you will, right? So I have some quick rapid questions for everyone here. And I believe we went last, or did we go first? How did we order? Jermaine, remind me? We just went, Sharon went last. I guess Sharon goes first, right?
Yes.
We'll start that way? Okay, wonderful. All right. I'll give you a minute when you're ready. Let me know when you're ready.
Serena, you're going to have to repeat that for me.
Oh, are you ready? I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I didn't ask yet. I didn't ask the question.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, perfect. All
Ready.
Right. Ready? Okay.
Ready.
What's your favorite restaurant in the district?
Oh, there are many choices. I've listed Patrick's Steakhouse before, but I've really come to enjoy a small business that offers more takeout than it is sit-in dining. It's Ma's. It's located on Empire Boulevard. And it makes me think of one of the things I enjoyed growing up in this neighborhood was that all of my friends came from different places. And it reminds me so much of my friend Sharon Welch's mother's Southern home cooking. So I really enjoy getting some short ribs from that place.
Sounds good. Timothy?
I already know I'm gonna go with the Haitian cuisines on me. I think that's top tier. I made a promise that I would never go back on them, no matter how many times people ask me this question during forums. So glad I got to it before somebody else did.
Okay. Jelani?
Camillo's or Aunts and Uncles, depends on what kind of mood I'm in.
Okay. Ryan?
Aunts and Uncles, for healthy options, Lips Cafe, because I just love the vibe in there.
Okay. Pierre?
I don't eat out a lot, okay? But when I do, it's still the same answer as last time, which is Immaculate, because they have the great Haitian patties. You can get it with fish, you can get it with beef. And then they also have great griot, and it's just good food. But I don't eat out often. I try to have my home cooked food.
Thank you for that. And since it's Valentine's Day, you just gave us some great options to go and try. So next question, right? What's your favorite park in the district? And when was the last time were you at that park? And we're going to go back to, Pierre.
Sure. So Wingate Park, I believe over the summer, there was an event that we went to. It was it was Edu, and they were giving away books, and it's just a great space for people to be able to have recreational activities.
Brian.
Wingate Park as well. I was there on Saturday, but also fond childhood memories of Duncan's Delight basketball tournaments in the park.
Jelani.
Wingate Park is close to the house. I go running there sometimes in the morning, so it's a close park to me.
When's the last time you were there?
I was there 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Tim?
I'm going to take a turn here. I'm not going to say Wingate Park, but there was a playground right next to MS61. So for all my 61 heads in the house, y'all already know the Market and Jason, the playground that's there. I think that it just reminds me of our legacy and where we're coming from with Britamore Academy and all the amazing folks that came through MS61. And I think that's my spot because I like sometimes just getting a slice of pizza from Lenny's and just chilling out, listening to some nice music and sitting on the bench when watching everybody have fun.
Sharon?
It has to be Broward Park. It's because of the location of the Brooklyn Children's Museum and giving my nephew an opportunity to run around to let off some of that energy. He likes seeing he's 4 years old, and he likes seeing the bigger kids play basketball, soccer, and I told him under no circumstances whatsoever he could get his own skateboard.
Thank you. And next question, starting with Sharon. What's your stop on the train in the district? What train do you get off at in the district?
So to use the parlance of the dollar cab drivers, Utica.
Okay, that's Tim.
Church Ave.
Okay, Jelani. That's number. I need the number.
Either whatever comes first, either 3 or the 4, but usually Utica. If I feel like walking, I get off at President and walk across Cal to my residence.
Okay. Brian?
Good question. From going to the barbershop, Church Avenue, from going straight home, Winthrop, on a 2-line.
Okay. Pierre?
Well, if I'm going straight home, I'll get off at Winthrop, but if I need to get food on the way home, one of my favorite restaurants, Golden Crust, I'll get off at Sterling and get the Golden Crust there, and then I'll walk home instead of getting back on the train.
It seems all the answers encompasses food. So I'm guessing after this, everyone's going to have some dinner. So we're now going to go into the end of our forum. I just wanted to say, I want to thank everyone for necessarily taking part. This is a very important part of the process. It was very important to us. Full disclosure, we have met with many of the candidates here. And when we spoke to them, we told them that we want to just have a forum, right? Some of them we have known long, some of them not so long. We want to make sure that our county committee members got a chance to see them, know them, hear their thoughts, their vision, not just a name. Also just ensure that they had access to everybody who is running in the race, right? No matter what the outcome is, it is clear that I believe that everyone do care about this community. So with that being said, I'd like to just bring it over to closing statements and remarks. And we are going to, I believe we have to end with Pierre. So this is going to give, Jermaine, remind me, is it 2 minutes or 1 minute for closing statements and remarks?
It is 2 minutes.
It's 2 minutes? So now
I'm sorry, 1 minute, 1 minute, I'm sorry.
1 minute?
Yes.
1 minute. So now this is not your last pitch, because you guys are going to do many more forums, going to be meeting many more people out there in the community. But this is your pitch for the night. So we want to make sure the floor is yours, and we'll give you a minute and a half. Okay, I think we could squeeze that in there. We could do that. So Sharon, your closing statements to the audience and the 43rd.
So I want to thank everybody on this forum and all the listeners that have come to hear what we have to say for their time on Valentine's Day today. It's clear that our community has many, 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 many positives, but it's also clear that we have not had the opportunity to have our needs met. Working in the state legislature means that it's going to be a collaborative process. We're going to have to work with people at the federal level. We're going to have to work with our colleagues at the city level, but most importantly, we're going to be working with our community members. We sincerely want to make sure that we have the resources. So this is not only the place that we'd like to live, but this will become the place where everyone would like to live without displacement, of course. What does that mean? Making sure that we bring the right resources to our community, making sure that we have opportunities to learn and to grow, making sure that we are not overburdened by policing, by taxing, by unsafe conditions, making sure that when we're able to talk about, when the next generation talks about where they live, they say, as we say, proudly, we are from Crown Heights. Proudly, we are from Prospect Lefferts Gardens. Proudly, we're from East Flatbush. Proudly, we're from Flatbush. And what does that mean? That we're going to assure that the quality of life for each and every resident will rise, that there will be opportunities for generations to live here. It will be an opportunity for people not only to rent, but to own, and to make sure that we continue to have the best parks in the city, the best libraries in the city, the best access to public transportation, the best schools, in short, the best place to live.
Thank you for that. Timothy?
I just want to say thank you to everyone for being my Valentine's, being my date on Valentine's Day tonight. It's been a pleasure, spending some time to get to know all of you all. And I think that it's important that, we do everything we can to make sure we're electing someone that's ready to get the job done on day one. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm not a politician. I'm a community organizer. I've gotten my roots in this community. I've been able to educate students from this community. I've been able to mentor young Black men in this community as well as, organizing with other groups and local community organizations that I look forward to working with regardless of the outcome of this election. So I'm super excited, to get everything that we want get done on day one, from advocating for CUNY to co-sponsoring good cause eviction, to make sure we're advocating for the passage of the New York Health Act. But also I want to use this opportunity to answer some of the questions that were in the chat. I think when we're talking about things like the Black maternal morbidity rate, that's another thing that needs to be addressed in this community. When we're talking about the lack of access to transportation, we have a couple of good bus routes that run really smooth, but then you have other ones that don't. I think it's important that we're doing everything we can as an assembly member to use our platform to advocate for our community at large. I'm looking forward to doing that for you all. I know, again, we didn't get to all the questions that were in the question and answer. So I'm dropping my cell phone number and my social media channel and stuff like that in the chat. So if you ever feel like I didn't answer something, or you feel like I danced around a question, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Shoot me a text. That's my personal cell. I'm looking forward to serving you all this year.
Jelani?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Sitting here amongst these fine people here, Sharon, Brian, Tim, and Pierre, it really is a blessing for the 43rd Assembly District to have such great options. And I think it's time, and the 43rd is used to very good, independent leadership. And that's what you're getting with me. I live here, I work here, I'm from here. I've always done the work, will continue to do the work. Right now, we have a great opportunity to send a truly independent voice to Albany, someone who will fight day one for issues like maternal mortality. I'm looking to build the first women and children's hospital right here in central Brooklyn. I think it's an absolute embarrassment that right here in the heart of Brooklyn, and even Brooklyn as a whole, that there's no dedicated women and children's hospital right here. I'm looking to really now address the affordable housing crisis and protect tenants and protect homeowners. That needs to happen day one. Passing good cause eviction, but also passing stronger tenant laws to protect tenants, and also keep in mind of the homeowners in our community as well. And making sure when tax season comes around that they have an adequate tax bill that's not going to displace them, so they can pass it on to their kids or their grandkids. Also looking at the gun violence issue, which hits each one of us. I remember one day walking from school, PS 241, and one of my friends was shot on the corner of St. John's. Thankfully, he survived. But that's how close it came to be it being me. We literally were 2 feet away from each other, laughing and joking, and I turned my back and heard a gunshot. This is real, and we have to address it. There's so many issues that we have to tackle day one, and it's time for this great assembly district to come together and with one voice say, this is our representative. For far too long, there's been a lot of divisive rhetoric going on here. I also want to acknowledge the people in the chat. There's a lot of questions that were in the chat that weren't answered. And I hope that we have other opportunities to answer those questions. There are real issues at stake in this election, and we have to answer all of those questions. And I'm looking forward to be on every corner, knocking on every door, shaking every hand to answer those questions. Day one, whoever we win this race has to go right in to the budget negotiations, the most crucial part of the job of a state assembly member and a state senator. It's time for you to send someone there who knows how to get things done. Not time to learn on the job, but day one, getting in there, going to Carl Hasty saying, this is what we need to get done. Once again, my name is Jelani DeShong. I look forward, and I thank the host for this debate, but I look forward to answering more questions of substance that the people really care about. Thank you.
Ryan?
Thank you so much to the host, to everyone who spent the time the last 2 hours with us to talk about these issues that are so critical to our community. Obviously, we all said it, 60 seconds is not enough time to answer some of the deeply rooted issues that have taken place in our community over the span of years and a lack of investment. Topics like transportation, topics like healthcare, and obviously people have mentioned Black women's maternal health, and that's something I've also shared openly about my own struggles and my wife's own struggles with those issues. So these are issues that are deep, they're personal, they are things that are a part of our community. But we also haven't talked about the environment and the built environment in our communities, how we have one of the lowest green quality districts in the community, no trees, the lack of safety in our community. These are all things, like many of us have said, that have to be addressed on day one. It takes someone who both has the experience both inside of government, working on all three levels of government, both the city, state, federal, but also someone who's able to put their feet on the ground and do the work with the nonprofits and get those things done. Over the last 19 years, I've spent a lot of time thinking about these issues, thinking about how I can address these issues, both from a staffer perspective and hopefully as your next assembly member. I hope to take all these experiences, the lived experience, the learned experiences, the mistakes made over the last few years to make our community better, stronger, and more united. There is no time to play. On March 23rd, someone's going to Albany. And as we said, there's legislation to be passed, there's a budget to be passed, and there are issues that have affected this community far too long that needs to be addressed. It is time to move forward, and it's time for us to move forward as United Front. I thank all the candidates again for raising their hands and saying they want to serve this community. I think all of us have shown our commitment and love for this community. But again, I know for a fact that on day one, we'll be ready to tackle those tasks. And these are not issues that we've started talking about in this campaign. These are issues that go back when I was in 2017 running. I have been consistently consistent in the things that I find important for this community and the things that folks have said to me. Over the next few weeks, I look forward to meeting all you at train stations, your doors, and wherever we meet, in parks, as the weather starts to break. But we have a short window of time to tackle these issues, and I plan on being there with you to champion those issues every step of the way. Thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you. And Pierre?
Thank you. So I've enjoyed working at the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery for the last 7 years. I've enjoyed advocating for residents upstate. And I've enjoyed advocating for residents Long Island. And for me, running for this assembly seat is an opportunity and a chance for me to serve the residents in this district and to advocate for people in this district. All of the issues that we brought up certainly do need someone to work on those issues right away. Someone that has an understanding of policy, an understanding of legislation, an understanding of what happens to legislation when you turn it over to state, agencies. Concerning the Black maternal health issue, my wife is an OBGYN. And it burdens her all the time to hear about what's happening in the hospitals, the treatment that they're receiving. But I want to add, we need to look at it as many times by the time that they actually get to the hospital, they're already in poor conditions. And this wouldn't be the case if they had reliable, consistent access to healthcare. So one of the things that I would do is champion healthcare, making sure that everyone has access to healthcare, and that is not just a benefit. When you apply for a job, they give you dental benefits. They give you vision benefits. Health is not a benefit. It is a human right. You have a right to live. So one of the things I will do is be a voice for the vulnerable community. But the vulnerable is not just for those individuals. You're talking about people that are homeless. You're talking about people that have been victims of sexual abuse, people who have been victims of violence, people who have been impacted by mental illness, particularly young Black men that have seen their dreams disappear during the pandemic, that have seen their wages gone down, and have seen their hours cut. So I will be a champion for those that for too long that have felt like they have been powerless and have been overpowered by the powerful. Our campaign is a grassroots effort and it has been driven by individuals. So I will be a voice for the powerless, and I will advocate to help raise the wealth in our community. Because if you look at all the issues that we have, it stems from a lack of wealth. We need to revamp our educational system. We need to have a strong job growth plan, and we need to reform the criminal justice system. Give an avenue for people who are coming out of prison. Give them an opportunity to get their life back on track. So that is why I'm running for New York State Assembly, Pierre Marc Albert.
Thank you very much. And as stated before, again, a lot of questions was generated from emails, but we do understand there are questions in the chat. So the candidates are able to drop the information in the chat. You can answer these questions within like 2 hours. So we encourage all of you to drop your information in the chat where our constituents can reach out to you, collaborate, could have sit downs and have different discussions on your vision and your priorities. We do strongly encourage that as well. This is one of many different forums. I know Crown Heights North will be having a forum coming up. And I also know there's various other clubs I'll be having forward. I encourage everyone to participate, and I encourage everyone to attend, and I encourage everyone to remain civically engaged. So once again, feel free to drop your information, let people know where they can find you, get in contact with you, and learn about you while we have the 10 minutes here at the moment. And I just wonder if there's any closing remarks you'd like to make it do before we close for this evening? While people take the time to drop the information in the chat.
Thank you, Saran. I just want to make sure I'm brief in regards to the closing. I just want to congratulate all of the candidates who are running for the seat, for the open 43rd Assembly District seat. I'd like to acknowledge Brian Cunningham, Mr. Jelani Deshawn, Mr. Timothy Hunter, Ms. Sharon Wedderburn, and Pierre Albert. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us and speaking to the public and sharing your vision and sharing your experiences in regards to why you're prepared and why you're qualified for day one for being the next assembly member. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Vanguard Independent Democratic Association, the Shirley Chisholm Democratic Club, the Rosa Parks Democratic Club, and the Arthur Ashe Democratic Club. So thank you all for attending. Thank you for the Brooklyn Young Dems. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy Isaac, and co-district leader, Serena Purcell. Thank you all. Have a good night. Happy Valentine's Day. I don't want to take you away from your families or your loved ones. Thank you all. It was a great debate. It was great to hear all of you. I'm excited about this race. Thank you very much and good night.
And thank you to our viewers, our listeners, and our attendees. Have a good night, everyone. See you guys soon. And we allow people to get the contact from the chat, so you can stay on. If you drop your information in the chat, you're welcome to exit the room. But we're just going to leave it on a little bit longer just to make sure everyone's able to capture the information that was dropped in the chat. Okay, wonderful. Great, great, great. Okay, I think I gave enough time so everyone can have everyone's emails, website. Thank you. All right, so we could close out the room.
Serena, was this recorded?
Yes, and